I'm really focused on helping companies make work work. One is you never know, so stop worrying and just make a decision. Within a year, I was 33% more profitable. If you're the leader and you show up 5 minutes late to the meeting and like, oh, I had another meeting, you're telling everyone, well, you don't care.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Today, my guest is a world-renowned speaker, author, consultant, Mr. Chris Dyer. He is, dare I say, a guru when it comes to company culture, right? And it's not just based on learning through books or courses. It actually comes through Chris launching and growing his own organization to over 4,000 employees before he eventually sold it and made this pivot into consulting, speaking, and writing. He is a wealth of knowledge. We touch on leadership, communication, team effectiveness, how to run better meetings. It's all really, really actionable. So please strap in, go grab a notebook, or at the very least, pay close attention because you're about to learn a lot and be entertained at the same time. Without any further ado, Mr. Chris Dyer. Chris, you're a doing consulting, you're a speaker, you're a decorated author as well. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. What are you working on these days?
Well, I mean, these days it feels a bit frenetic. There's, a lot going on with my kind of core competencies around culture and leadership.
Mm,
And I'm really focused on helping companies make work work. It's a
make work work.
pretty simple concept, right? And
Yeah.
but a pretty complex approach. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that. So I'm there to kind of help with that. And of course, there's a million things happening with AI and the future of work. And I've been really fortunate to be advising a lot of cool companies, working with a lot of cool clients that are doing some really cool crap, some just stuff that we wouldn't even have thought was possible 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. So it's been a lot of fun. And I'm just, I like being a part of things like how do we do new things? How do we take what we already know and make it better and improve it? And so that's kind of been my focus in the last year.
Nice. Making work work. You said you're advising some new, a lot of startups, I think, right? In like what AI technology space is interesting. But you're focused mostly on company culture. Is that right?
Hmm. That's right.
Okay. And when it boils down to company culture, we're talking leadership, how people communicate with each other, teams. What's sort of like your starting point when you hop in with a new client?
I mean, starting point is usually looking at their meetings because I
Okay.
can tell pretty quickly what their culture is like by being in their meetings.
Oh, nice.
Um, do their meetings suck? Does everyone hate the meetings? Are they in meetings all the time?
Sure.
They're in more meetings than they are actually doing the work. Are their meetings very hierarchical, right? Are they like you show up and you sit and listen to senior leaders talk and then you don't get to say anything? Or are they
Mm,
highly collaborative? Or are they wildly
mm,
disorganized? Or I mean, there's so many like clues, I mean, it's sort of like if your friend tells you, like, listen, I can't find the perfect partner. I go on all these dates and I never get a second date. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to sit at the table next to you and I'm going to observe your date. And suddenly you're like, now I
nice.
know why you
Nice.
can't get a second date, buddy. Like, just going and observing those interactions is pretty easy to understand, like, where those areas of focus need to be. There's some really deeper, larger strategic things we need to do, but
Mhm.
just as a starting point, it's like let's fix that easy stuff quickly.
Yeah, fix the low-hanging fruit, right? Things that are going to make impact pretty instantaneously. Interesting that you, like you said, you sit in on their meetings and see what's going on. I'm curious, anybody that's listening or that sits in meetings, that hosts meetings for their companies, right? Are there some things that they could maybe try and address themselves, or like take a third person perspective that you can maybe give some advice on?
Sure. I mean, if you're just looking at meetings, and let's go back to basics. Are you going to a meeting without an agenda?
Mm.
Like, if people don't know what we're going to talk about, they can't possibly show up with good ideas, be well informed. And yet people show up and they're like, okay, well, today we're going to talk about this, everybody. And everyone's like, well, I don't know what that is, or haven't pulled that report, or I don't know the update of that. And then we go, well, how come no one has any good ideas? Well, because no one knew what we were going to talk about, right? There are
Yeah,
people that can just snap stuff off, but most people need time to process, need time to think,
sure,
need
sure.
to know what's going to happen. So, like, even if it's a one agenda item thing, that's fine. But do people know what we're going to talk about when they show up?
Yeah,
And we might say, well, sometimes for a special meeting they do, but like the generic, hey, we have a sales meeting every Monday. Like, what are the specific things we're talking about so that we can be
sure,
prepared? Do we
sure.
start the meeting on time?
Mm,
This is a huge culture indicator to me. If the meeting starts at 9 and it's 9:01, it's 9:02, it's 9:03, and like people aren't on yet, we haven't started yet, they're still yickety yakking about dumb things. That pisses people off. They have things to do. They want to get their business done. Like, if the meeting's at 9, by 9:01, you should be rolling.
yeah,
We're going. Now, if it's a like show up and chit chat meeting and get caught up, that's fine. But this is like, hey, I called this meeting because XYZ Plumbing, our largest customer, is pissed off. Like, by
mm,
9:01, like,
nice.
okay, we have our agenda. Let's start talking about this stuff.
Definitely.
And let's get on this. Because if we start late, we tell people we don't care about your time. My time's more important than your. If you're the leader and you show up 5 minutes late to the meeting and like, oh, I had another meeting, you're telling everyone, well, you don't care,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, tell them that the other
So,
meeting was more important than this one that you're busy going into.
or their time was or whatever. So, like, we used to have a rule that if you showed up late, like by 9:01, you show up late, you had to sing a song.
Nice.
And I've had other customers, other clients do read a poem, or they had other variations of things that felt good for them. Um, but like something, some social, pressure. And so what happened is like you're on that other call that needs to end, and you're like, listen, I gotta go now.
Yeah, I don't want to have to go sing a song in my other meeting if I'm late.
Right. And it was a fun thing, and people would hear that, but also whoever you're talking to, they're like, okay, you value time. I understand. We said this call is
Yeah,
going to end at 9, and you have another call, and you're telling me you got to go. There's some social contract stuff there. Like, there's some respect that's built, even with the person whose meeting you're leaving.
so true.
Meetings should always end early.
Okay.
If you are always taking that meeting, so there's a thing called Parkinson's Law, which says
Mm,
if you set an amount of time to do something, it tends to take you that amount of time to do it.
correct.
So you call a meeting from 9 to 9:30, magically we fill it up full of things, and we're right up to the end, and then all of a sudden we leave. That's stupid. We should come out and say, here's our agenda and our goal today. We're gonna start on time. Our goal today is to end early.
Nice.
We can figure this out now, and we can get off early. We can be done at 9:15 or 9:12 or 9:23. That adds up, right? And we're being efficient with our time. And so I notice when meetings start late, meetings go way over time. We start pushing into people's calendars, and we don't care that we're screwing up their calendar and their day. That is a big indicator of a larger issue.
What I
So
mean, these are great, like you said, like very simple, basic things. But I mean, what do you think that it is? 90% of meetings don't follow this,
yeah, yeah,
right?
especially in a company that's struggling, right? In a
Sure.
great culture, I would not expect to see this on a regular basis. Might be
Mm, mm,
pinpoint into one particular manager's, issue, but like
mm.
the average company I walk into, that this stuff's happening. And what's interesting is that meetings starting on time has actually gotten a little bit better with Zoom and remote work and post-COVID. It's gotten a little bit better because people have so many meetings, but the running over has gotten worse, and that filling up
Interesting.
that time has gotten worse.
Yeah, so have an agenda, start on time, right? Show the people that you're meeting with that you value their time, right? So interesting also that like, the meetings that you're leaving, it also expresses to that individual like this person values time. And then end
Right,
meetings early, right? Don't just fill the time because the time is there to be filled, right?
right, right.
Chris, when it comes to company culture stuff, right? How are your clients or people even listening, how are they seeing like, hey, I have a company culture problem? Like, what are some like the signs before they decide to go look for help?
The big issues are things like performance, productivity, and profits are not what they want them to be. And
Mm,
so usually an owner of a company or someone's going to say, listen, my profits aren't right. And I go, cool, let's talk about that. Like, what's the issue? And inevitably it's a culture issue
well,
because either we have not focused in a way that allows us to be more sales focused, or maybe we are not being customer service focused enough. And so we're losing clients. Maybe we have not been transparent enough and our people don't really understand how we make money, what things cost, why they cost money. And if people understand, so I started showing my entire staff, thousands of people, our profit and loss summary every single month. I gave them my P&L. We talked about it on a company-wide call. Within a year, I was 33% more profitable. I never said to anybody, we need to save money. Go find ways to save money. We're having an initiative or did any, prizes or I just started telling people the information and they on their own started saying, "Hey, why do we have two vendors for this?" Or why does it cost us that much for health insurance? Like
mm,
my
mm,
brother-in-law like has an agency, like I get us a quote and like all of a sudden like we saving 20% on that. Like
yeah.
because they knew they could help more,
Wow.
right? And
Nice.
so it's really powerful.
Yeah. So it sounds like a company culture piece even is, it sounds to me like transparency is a great place to
Yeah.
start as well, right? But
Yeah,
it's not over communicating.
no, and so transparency is like my first pillar for what makes a great culture. Now, you had kind of frame this around warning signs, you might also think about high turnover. You might think about high customer turnover. You might think about, low engagement scores, low NPS scores. I mean, all these things are tied to culture.
Mm,
Um, but when we're being transparent, it's about giving people the additional context, the additional information, and maybe sometimes it is over communicating, but people will decide how much they want to take in. So I always
sure.
told my leaders, it's better to give more and over communicate. And if somebody doesn't have the time or they're not interested, then that's their business. That's fine. But I've at least given you that opportunity to understand why and to give a little more. But it rarely is it like I've sent people 19 hours of things to review. It's more like
Yeah.
I took 5 extra minutes in a meeting so that you understood why we made this decision, how we made this decision, who was involved with the things, so that you understand you're not filling in the gaps with some story in your head that we just didn't like your idea or whatever. And number three, you can start to learn and make better decisions for the company on your own because you've understood our thought processes because we took the 5 extra minutes to explain it to you.
So rather over communicate because people will sort of shut off by themselves, like when they don't have the capacity to take in more. But then when you do over communicate or you're communicating effectively, you're taking those 5 extra minutes, now the understanding comes through of what they can do by themselves on their own. It's almost like through that communication, right? You're developing more leaders within your organization as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Or at least better decision makers, right? You're
mm,
developing more people who can think the way we want them to think.
mm,
Um, Southwest Airlines, they've lost a little bit of their shine, but they were pretty famously for years. They back up their employees on the decisions they make, no matter what. If the employee thought that they were
nice.
making the right decision for the customer, they gave their employees incredible leverage to make decisions. And if there was some, I don't know, news article about it or there was some hoopla about it, Southwest would step in and say, we support the employee. The employee was trying to do the right thing. They would never say, the employee made a mistake. The employee did the wrong thing. They should have made this decision, not that decision. Now, privately, they would
Sure.
pull that employee aside and say, listen, next time, here's how we want you to think about doing this. We would give them retraining or whatever. But like publicly, they always said the employee was did the right thing at that moment. They were trying to make the right decision. And
Mm,
so showing up and backing them up, even if they have to retrain later, gives the employees that confidence that like I can try.
Sure.
I can make a decision. I don't have to go back and sit here and pretend to never make a decision and keep asking my boss to make decisions for me,
Yeah.
right? That's how
Yeah.
organizations create innovation and speed and get things done faster and increase productivity and performance and profits because we're helping people make decisions they're perfectly capable of making by
Mm.
removing all of that fear and removing all of that unknown by explaining things just a little bit more every time.
Nice. Remove that fear that employees have to not be able to make a decision. There's too much red tape, or I'm
Yep.
going to be judged, or I'm going to be scolded for doing this if I make a mistake. I want to rewind here in a second to talk about a little more of your journey. But what's the value in letting employees make mistakes or almost promoting it? Like try, make mistakes. That's kind of what we want at the company.
Absolutely. So that's actually my seventh pillar is mistakes. So the best organizations in the world leverage mistakes. They openly bring them up. They bring them out into the light. They learn from them, right? It's a part of the journey of that employee that we understand they're going to make mistakes and they're going to make good mistakes. They're going to make bad mistakes. We're going to make lucky mistakes. So there's going to be all those things. And so sometimes those mistakes turn into great new products and innovations. Sometimes it's just that understanding. So if you look at a company that uses a Scrum and Agile methodology, there's literally a meeting at the end of the sprint called the retrospective, where the entire point of that meeting is to say, what could we have done better? Where did we make mistakes? And how are we going to correct that? So next week we don't do that again and we get faster and we get more efficient. And so it's never like, how do we figure out who made a mistake so we can yell and scream at them or we can
Yeah.
fire them? The whole process is how do we get a little bit better? And we understand that things are going to happen. Now, understand there's a very clear difference here between mistakes and errors.
Mm. Okay.
Errors are I don't really care about my job and I'm just going to do stuff. I'm apathetic. And so I should have made
Because
a
you
better
don't
decision.
care, you make an error.
Right. I'm overworked. I don't take care of myself. I worked, two back-to-back 24-hour shifts and I gave the wrong medicine to Mr. Johnson and he died. That's an error, right? I
Yeah.
should not have been that tired. I should not have been in that position. That's not I tried to do the right thing. That's just like I didn't take care of myself or
Mm.
the
Mm.
company didn't help take care of me. And so bad things happen. Those are errors, right? I'm not properly
Sure.
trained. I don't have the actual training, capacity, intelligence, whatever. Like if you put me in the wrong job, if you're like, hey, Chris, I need someone to perform brain surgery. I would like you to do it. You seem like a nice guy. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'm gonna make a lot of errors, and that's not
Yeah.
okay because
No.
I'm not a brain surgeon. I have no training in that. I mean, I could go watch a YouTube video, but like I'm probably gonna screw it up, right? I do
Yeah.
not have the actual training, so I'm gonna make a lot of errors in that capacity. So you understand that's the
Sure.
difference. Whereas mistakes are, I'm trying to do the right thing. I have the
Correct.
training. I'm making a decision, and oops, you know what? That wasn't actually the right thing.
Mm.
I really thought
Mm.
this new header on our website would bring us more traffic, and I changed it, and you know what? It actually went down. We're going to go back to the old one, or we're going to tweak it this way. But it's in
Nice.
that I'm
Nice.
trying to do the right thing, and it didn't work. That's a mistake versus
Yeah.
I don't care, or I'm not properly trained, or I don't have the right
Sure.
equipment, or whatever, and I'm gonna keep screwing things up.
Sure. Sure. Nice. I like that differentiation there between errors and mistakes. I get the question a lot. I'm sure you do as well. It's like, well, how do I know if I'm making the right choice? Like in life, just in general, of course, in work as well. Uh, Let me just ask you that in general before I actually give my opinion. Chris, how does somebody that's listening, right? They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They don't know what to do. How do they know which decision to make, how to make the right choice?
Well, there's two ways to tackle this. One is you never know, so stop worrying and just make a decision and then
Nice.
just keep going. Just make a decision and then you will adjust. Now, of course, within boundaries, there could be a decision that's like so detrimental or so overwhelmingly important to your life that making the wrong decision really will screw things up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like maybe don't marry someone 5 hours after after meeting them, like that might be something you want to weigh your pros and cons. But I think in most decisions, it's just make a decision.
Nice.
Um, Now, if you are in a situation where a lot of these decisions are big lifts, they are big impact, then it's just show some sort of framework here, right? Of are you actively thinking about what are the pros, what are the cons, what do I know, what do I don't know? Have I talked
Mm,
to
mm,
enough people and gotten enough information that I understand enough to make a good decision here? And is there any reason why I should not be the one to make this decision? Not because it's scary or not because I'm trying to, cover my butt, but like, again, using my silly brain surgery, thing. I'm be like, geez, there's your brain. And I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this. Let's let the doctor do it. Right. Maybe there's somebody else who should be making that decision. So, I think in big lifts, using a kind of some sort of decision-making matrix is a pretty good idea. But I can think of like, just let's just say this year, maybe two or three times when I had to think that way, and all of the
mm.
rest of the times, it's just make a decision
Make a decision
and then adjust. Wait and see and
and
then
then
adjust.
adjust. I love that. Make a decision and adjust. I mean, sure, right. Weigh the pros and cons. Think, am I the right person to be making this decision? I was like,
Hmm.
well, I was never trained how to defuse a bomb. So I probably shouldn't be the one to pick, is it the red wire or the green wire?
Exactly.
But after that, make a decision, right? They're just choices, they're just decisions, right? In the spot, and then pivot and adjust as you go forward, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that. I love it. Chris, let's rewind a little bit. So, you weren't born knowing about company culture and leadership, communication, right? Where did all this like skill set, this mindset come from?
Out of completely screwing it up and out of necessity, right? I mean, so
Okay.
um, I had a company. I started in 2001. We were doing fine until 2008. We weren't anything special, but we were fine.
Okay.
And then the world
What
went
were you
nuts.
guys doing? If you can, be more
Yeah,
specific.
it's a human capital company, background checks, drug screening, employee testing, things like that. So if you were hiring someone, we were a resource for companies.
Nice.
And 2008, 2009 hits, big recession, and I'm staring at my people going, I need help.
Mm,
What are we going to do? How are we going to solve this? And my people are staring back at me, essentially saying, tell us what to do. We'll go do it.
well,
And I'm frustrated because I'm thinking, are they apathetic? Do they
mm,
not get it? Are they stupid?
mm,
And I realized after a few days that the problem wasn't them. And even though we
okay,
were in a recession, the problem wasn't the market.
mm,
The problem was me. I had created this culture where I'm the idea guy, all the ideas go through me. They were the doers, I was the dreamer, and that doesn't work. And we had grown enough with that at scale. I mean, I could do that when I had five people in the office, but when you have 500 or 2,500 or 3,500, you're growing and growing and growing. Like you just can't do it that way anymore. And
mm,
I had to radically change the culture. The problem is I didn't know what to change it to.
mm,
It's sort of like, well, I would like a nice chocolate cake. How do I do that? Open the recipe book. Go try this. Can I try this one? I didn't feel like there was a recipe book for how to go build a culture. And if there was, I couldn't find it. And so there was pieces. And so I got really interested about all the pieces. And I started talking to all these top executives from around the world and getting all their knowledge. And I had a podcast for 10 years. It was very, very clear that there were these seven things that people did really, really well. And so that's where it kind of all got interesting because I was like, well, let's just focus on these and these only. I made it my job all day long to only focus on culture. I stopped making virtually any decisions that had to do with the company. My
well,
leaders did that. My teams did that. I just said, how can I make the culture better? How can I get out my virtual machete every day and clear away the crap and get you more of the resources you need, make you happier, more efficient, that's all I did. And we were 15 years best places to work, five times fastest growing company. Like everything happened after that, right? So when I'm involved in all the decisions and I'm involved in everything and I know everything that's going on, we're okay. And when I have no idea what's really going on, but I'm just spending all my time trying to help them be as efficient and as good as they can be, we're kicking ass. Like we're going crazy. And that was a huge lesson for me that I've been able to kind of go and help people with.
So, wow, so it sounds like the secret actually for all of your growth is getting out of the way of your people and giving them the resources and the help that they might need to grow themselves, right? To work more effectively, efficiently, all the
Yeah.
above.
Yeah. I mean, clearly we
Oh,
had to like know what we were doing. I had to, train them and they had to know how to do the thing. But like once we got past
sure.
that point, yeah, it was about letting them go be magical, go be the amazing people
Oh,
that they are. Yes, if they
mm,
need my help. Yes, if they can't make a decision and there's only I can make it, sure, I can step in. But it took a year, literally
mm.
a year of people walking into my office saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I had to say, "I don't know. What do you think?" And they would tell me, and I would say, "Well, go try it. Let me know how it works."
Nice.
Even though I knew there was a better way to do it than what they thought, even though I knew they probably were doing it the wrong way. Now, I might would stop them if it was a really, really dumb
Sure, sure,
idea.
sure.
I was gonna screw something up, but like I would have to let them walk out the door knowing they were gonna go screw it up, and then they were gonna learn, and they were gonna come back and go, oh, well, this didn't work, and I learned this, and now I'm gonna try it this way. Okay, cool. Let me know how it goes. Instead of me just giving them the answer.
Because they were all trained up until that point, not 100% trained, but that you were
Yeah.
the one that gave the answers, right? You were the ideas guy.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Wow.
And I got them out of that. So, and amazingly, they started coming up with the right ideas,
Mm,
often better ideas than I would have
mm,
come up with because they were closer to it, right? Again, there's
sure.
five people in the office, you understand everything that's going on. There's 3,500 people in the office. You got no idea what's really going on. You're not that close to the clients and what's happening and all that. So they have way better ideas.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it, right? Like they are on the ground, they're next to the clients, they're implementing like the businesses, procedures, services, whatever it might be. They should be the ones coming up with the ideas. And so, Chris, you don't. This isn't still business that you're running today, right? If I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, you sold.
Yep. Sold at the end of 2021, decided, at 20 something years, it had been enough.
Wow. There must have been
So,
a pretty big shift that happened after 20 years.
yeah, big shift. It's like all your habits, these little habits that you don't realize you have when you have a company for that long, like sitting down, opening up the software, looking at your revenue numbers, like
Mm,
looking at little metrics and checking things and talking to certain people during the day and like these little tiny habits. And then, it took me almost a year to like stop like sitting down and not going to go do that thing that I did for 24 years or whatever. It's kind of crazy. You kind of get these little habits. So, and then I had to like replace them
yeah,
with other things and other habits and other good outcomes that, were better. But
yeah,
it was certainly an adjustment, to go from worrying about and managing and leading that many people to sitting in my office and just, wondering what my dogs are doing. It's just, and,
yeah.
and and I had clients and people I consult, and that's grown and like so that's changed. But there was like about a 3 month moment of like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah. How did you work through it? Because I'm actually equating in my mind to like when people retire after a career, right? I hear a ton like fall into like a depression actually because they feel like they don't have a purpose anymore. They've totally lost their identity that was in their work. And how did you work through it? How can like you advise people to do the same?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to identify what it was that I was really missing. Was it the habit? Was it the activity? Was it the connection to the people involved? I realized that I missed working with, like, I had a senior team that I worked with very closely, and then all of a sudden, I'm not working with them,
Mm,
and and I so was it that I really wanted to work with them? Was it that I wanted to work with a senior team and have a company again? Or was it just that I wanted a team, that it was fun to be with a team of people and talk about things? And I realized ultimately the last thing was what I really missed. I could do it in any form, but what I really missed was just having a group. And so I have a couple clients who I consult with. I work with their teams, one with their leadership team, one with their
nice.
sales team for 15 minutes every day.
Mm.
We get together for 15 minutes and we solve big things. We talk about stuff, keep momentum going. And in both organizations, even though one, I'm only working with like just leadership in general, and one I'm
Mm,
working with
mm,
sales
mm.
in general. In both companies, we have tripled their sales in
Oh
over
wow.
just over a year. Um, because it just all that it all connected, right? Everything is
Sure.
connected.
Sure.
And that wasn't necessarily like my goal to go in triple sales, but when you're going in and you're talking about things and you're keeping momentum going, and I just needed that little energy thing from them. That's been exactly what I needed. But if you're in that position, my mentor, I won't say exactly what she said, just in case you don't want cursing on the podcast. But she said it's gonna take you 6 months to get uneffed. Like,
Oh wow.
you're gonna be totally screwed.
Yeah.
And she was right and wrong. She was wrong that it was 6 months because it was really a year for me.
Wow.
It took me to get out of those habits, to find new ones, to figure it out, and not to be to I was missed people and was lonely and it was all this stuff, but you
Mm,
figure it
mm,
out. I was
mm,
kind of systematize it, but
mm.
um and I'm happy I did it. I don't regret it, but like it is very different.
Yeah, it's different. It sounds like the biggest piece of practical advice is to figure out what are the pieces that you're missing and replace those habits with not necessarily similar activities, but I guess activities or things that evoke similar emotions.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. And then give it time, right? Like you said, she
Oh,
said it was going to be 6 months and then it was a year, and that's fine.
I mean, you brought up the people who have been retired. I think it's a pretty good parallel that a lot of people retire if they have a purpose, if they have clubs and groups, if they have a charity, they might go get another job.
Mm,
But they tend to have some replacement thing. If you just retire and you go sit on your lazy boy every day and you don't have anything to do, you're gonna be pretty miserable. You're probably not gonna live very long.
sure.
Um, right? So you have to have some replacement activity. It doesn't have to be a job, but I know a lot of people who they're in all these different social clubs and they have a lot of different things. Some of them like are involved in charities and they're volunteering their time. And so my great grandmother, like she won some award for volunteering, like all like I don't know, something like 30,000 hours at a hospital guild, and I remember thinking as a kid, like, you're nuts. Like, I can't believe you did that. But as an adult, I get it now. Like, that was her purpose. I gave her
Oh,
purpose
wow.
in her later years. She didn't have anybody else. The kids are gone. The grandkids are barely around. Like, that gave her a purpose to go and do that work and to help people in the hospital. And she lived to like 99 years old. Of course she did, because she had
Wow.
something to do and to be active and a purpose and all of that, right?
Man, the importance of making sure we have a purpose, right? Something to keep us going that we're sort of chasing. Chris, so
Yeah.
you sold, it took a year to really figure out your identity again, right? Your routines. And did you know that you were going to start headed towards being a consultant, a speaker? I don't know if you did stuff in between that time also. I mean, how did you end up where you are today?
Um, you know, I'm a bit of an accidental fill in the blank. I'm an accidental, CEO. I'm an accidental speaker. I'm an accidental author. Like at some point it's getting curious about something and saying yes a lot to things.
Nice.
Some of the best things in my life happened just because I said yes
Mhm. Mhm.
and was willing to explore it and try it. And even if I didn't think I was going to be any good at it, just be like, well, this will be fun. Let's figure it out. And then, you know, we did it. I mean, I did a podcast for 10 years. I just had no intention of being a podcast host. And I was on a podcast, and the guy who ran the studio said, hey, you should have a podcast. And I was like, I'm not
Mhm.
going to do a podcast. I got time for that. We talk. And I went back and talked to my marketing group, and they were like, oh, no, 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 you need to do a podcast. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? And so we had this discussion where they had a totally different view on it. I was like, fine, okay, I'll try it, I'll do it. And that was like so important. That got me the book offer. That got me a lot of that wisdom that I needed to run my business better. And so, you know,
Mhm.
I think it's just a lot of times it's about saying yes, being curious, being open to doing things that maybe aren't necessarily that linear, that small view of yourself, what you think you're supposed to do, and all of that. So
Do the nonlinear things. So you said you accidentally became a speaker, an author, consultant. I mean, I don't think you're accidentally making huge change in people's lives now, right? With leadership, communication, team effectiveness, and culture. Um, Man, get curious and say yes to things. I'm curious here. So you say yes to things, right? Where's the line of not saying yes to too many things and like finally focusing in on one thing?
I'm a big proponent for going and saying yes to everything. I did it for an entire year. Uh, and some of the best things that have happened in my life happened in that year. And I met some of the most amazing people who are still been my, still dear friends that I would have never met because I ended up in places I should have never gone to and never even would have considered. And I am pretty much in that mode now of still saying yes to most things. Now, can you hit capacity? Yeah. And so sometimes I've always used this sort of, I wouldn't call it a trick, but maybe this idea of yes and yes, but. So if someone says, "Hey, can you do this thing?" and I'm like at capacity, I can say yes, but I can't do it right now. I can do it in 6 months. I can do it in 3 months. I'm saying yes to you. Like I'd love to figure out if I can do this. But if you came to me and I was at capacity and you said, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?" and I just said no, I've now closed that door. If I would have said yes, but I can't do it for 3 more months, you've been like, "Okay, cool, we can book you out in 3 months." That's a very different way of interacting in the world.
Mm,
I also
mm.
wouldn't tell people that you say yes to everything. Like I would just go and do it and not tell everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't come off really quite as the same intentions or excitement if it's like, oh well, I'm saying yes because I say yes to everything.
Right, right. But like, if your friends and your spouse or your partner and your kids all know that you're all going to say yes to everything, like they start coming at you a little harder with a little different energy.
Yeah.
But if you're just open to that initial idea, it's probably the most important shift that I made because I used to be a little bit of I wouldn't say a no person, but I was, like I don't have time for that. I was a little guarded. Like it better be a really, really good idea. Should I do this thing? It better like the ROI better be like totally proven out and whatever. And when I shifted my mind to like, let's try it. Let's have that experiment. Let's see.
Yeah, why not?
Right. And even if it did cost us money, even if it wasn't the right thing, we learned from it and we figured out what we wanted for
Mm.
the next time. But like more times than not, when I said yes, I was happy I said yes.
Wow, that's
Right.
great.
So, especially I mean, if you're a CEO and you're like, totally at your wit's end and you don't know what to do with your life because you're so busy and important, maybe yes, saying yes all the time is not going to be for you. But for everybody else, I think it's a pretty good way to live your life.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'll take it directly from you. If you said you were a little bit of the opposite, and you were CEO of what at your biggest, you guys had 3,000, 4,000 employees?
Yeah, 4,500, something like that. Yeah.
4,500, yeah. So that's all work to say yes to more things. Chris, I would kill myself if I didn't ask you about communication real fast, right? Your overarching opinion, what are some tips on how to improve communication between teams, between individuals in teams? I just love the communication space.
Sure. So, if you want to improve communication, again, we go back to what we talked about before. There's that level of transparency. We have
Mm,
to understand what everyone else is doing and what their goals are and like what they're trying to achieve. If let's say I'm on the customer service team and you're on the sales team, if we don't know each other's department goals, like how do I know where you're coming from? Right? So if I know your goal is to like, I don't know, have 0% customer attrition, and here I'm the sales guy coming in, and I'm screwing everything up because I'm offering people this stuff that doesn't even exist. We're going to be
yeah, sure.
fighting,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so we have to know where we're each coming from. Now, once we're in a conversation, communication can really go up if we focus on things like clarity, um, I call it being the sense maker. So if you can try in your job and your work and your life to be the person that makes sense of things for people, especially right now, your value is really high. We don't need to be the person adding complexity
Mm,
to the conversation. It's one that we all need to understand what's happening. We know the variables. But if like we're trying to make a decision and you're the one showing up going, well, there's a 1% chance of this, and don't forget about these 15 things and this AI and this, like that's not what we need. We need is like, okay, I understand we have 100 ideas here. How do we cut away 40 of them, 60 of them? How do we get this down to a reasonable list? How do we start working through this? How do I, maybe as the leader or as a team member, help people understand what's really important here? Like what's that 80/20 rule? There's just more and more and more for us to know and understand that it really begins to be hard for people to actually make decisions because there's so much complexity, if that
mm,
makes sense.
It does. It does.
Right? And so how do we do that? How do we be that sense making person? And sometimes that might be a leader, it might be an expert in something. So, are we being really clear about what we want, about what the goal is, about what the client wants, whatever that thing is? Are we being really clear? Are we being concise? We don't want to be so verbose, right, that people aren't going to listen. Can we be concise? Have we
Mm,
given that complete information, And then are we delivering it in a way that's courteous as well? Those are sort of like the four C's to start
mhm.
off as your baseline. Um,
The four
and
C's.
then, yeah.
Concise. What? Clarity. Uh,
Mhm.
uh-oh.
Concise, complete, courteous, and clear.
Courteous. Concise, complete, courteous, and clear. Nice.
Now, that's going to be like your baseline. Now, if you're working inside of on a new project or with new people, a new client, then we need to think about there's four more C's we need to be thinking about. Um, the first one is connection. So have we
Mm,
connected with that person in some way? So if you work with this person every day, being clear is more important than the connection. But if this is the first time you're working with
sure.
someone, connection is really important because if they don't like you and you don't like them, or you're not on the same page somehow, it's going to be a problem.
Communication can
Um,
stop right there. Yeah.
yeah. Then we need to be highly collaborative in
Mm,
these, I would say new situations or intense situations is where I would kind of put these secondary four C's. So connection, and then are we being collaborative? And then are we giving deep concentration to this thing? Are we giving it our full attention, right? Concentration, meaning we're not checking Slack and doing five other things and checking our email and looking at our watch. Like, are we in this meeting and does someone feel like they're getting our full concentration? Which is hard to do these days.
it
I've been on
is.
calls all the time. Like, people are like over here, you can see them answering messages, see them doing other stuff. And you're like, are you really hearing me right now?
Mm, mm,
You know?
mm,
And then the last one is, can we be candid with them?
mm,
And being candid
mm.
is sometimes that skill in pushing through when we disagree, when someone's being difficult. Maybe they feel like they're being stupid, like whatever. They're asking for, it could be on with a brand new client, they're asking for something that is just like does not make any sense. Can you be candid with them about, what the solution should be? So kind of have those four to start, and then you have four more that are really the crux of dealing with new or complex situations.
Yeah. Newer, complex situations, dealing with them with connect with them, collaborative, concentration, right? Give people your full attention. And then can you be candid with them? Chris, I like it. I can speak with you for hours about communication, but I'm going to hold back so I can respect your time. Chris, thank you so much for being here. I always like to talk about legacy right at the end to wrap us up. And you're, in my mind, leaving a really amazing legacy by helping so many people directly help others also. But please tell us, what is your definition of legacy and what is the legacy that you're working to leave on this world?
I mean, I guess legacy is what you leave behind.
Mm,
And, I don't plan on leaving behind a building with my name or, something that's full of ego. I hope that maybe people remember some of the meetings. Maybe somebody might still read one of my books when I'm dead. Like, maybe I leave back some bit of wisdom. Maybe it'll all just be sucked into ChatGPT and regurgitated as somebody else's original thought. But like, I don't know. Again, I want work to work for people. And so if that's my legacy, that work works a little bit better for the owner and the CEO, better for the average employee, like better for everyone involved in that business, then I
Mhm.
guess that's a good thing.
That's a great thing. You're making work work for people. Chris, love it. If people want to learn more a little bit about you, where's the best place for them to go?
So a few resources. First, if you want to text 33777 and put my name Chris as the message, I'm happy to send you out some free resources on how to run your meetings better, how to hear your employees better. Um, Listening is one of my pillars, so kind of how you address that. And then if you want to connect with me, I'm on TikTok and Reels, Instagram Reels. I do a lot of content there. You can go to my website, chrisdyer.com, and I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. So if you find me there, I'm happy to accept your request to connect and collaborate there.
Nice, Chris. Thank you. We'll link to everything down below. Text, Chris to 33777 is a great way to get a bunch of free resources. Hey, thanks again for being here today, man. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. What did you guys think of Chris? Please reach out, let me know, and please share the episode. Help us to grow the show, help us to grow Chris's businesses as well. Isn't that interesting? Chris talks about just making work work, right? How can you make your work more effective? What a great outline for how to fix meetings. Really simple, right? Have an agenda, start on time, value everybody's time, and then end early. Just because it's set for 30 minutes, like, no, have a goal to end early. Don't just take the amount of time that you've allocated because it's there, right? Let's respect everybody's time more. And Chris talked about the importance of transparency, how to leverage and make mistakes. Great tips on decision making, right? Don't have analysis paralysis about making the right choice or decision. Just make a decision and then pivot, right? That's all that we can ever do. We make decisions based on the information we have at hand, what we believe is the best in the moment, and then we pivot. Simple as that, everybody. Don't get hung up on it. Talked about curiosity. Chris says he's just says yes to almost everything. And then last but not least, we talked about communication, which I love, right? Some of the tips were to be concise, complete, courteous, clear, and with new communications, new connections, right? He says, find a connection, be open to collaboration, focus on concentration, give someone your full undivided attention, and then be open and candid with people, right? I love to add in during conversations the question of, is it okay if I'm candid with you? Or say, is it all right if I'm completely open and honest with you right now? 99% of the time, you're going to get a yes, right? Everybody wants honesty, but now they have just openly said, yes, give me your feedback, give me your honest opinion. And so now you can hit them with pretty much any criticism, dare I use that word, any criticism, any constructive feedback you need to after you have asked for permission. So, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. If you're looking for help, Chris gave a phone number, 33777. You can text the word Chris, get some great freebies. And then also, I want to invite you to come over to journeytolegacy.org, see what we're up to. We're helping individuals become better leaders and communicate better as well. Thank you all so much for being here. Until next time, you've been listening to the Journey to Legacy podcast.